here on BBC One, 24 Hours with Kenneth Alsop.
Or 20 minutes with me, whichever works for you. Hello, welcome to the second part of my monthly series, 100 Years of the BBC in 100 Shows. I asked you, the dear viewers, to get in touch with your favourite BBC shows of the last 100 years, and I'm counting down from 100 to number one of your top picks. We're up to the second part now, running down from number 75 to number 50. So these are the programmes that just missed out on the top half of the top 100. And when you see some of the choices that people have made, you'll be astonished, no doubt, that some of these weren't a lot higher. But without further ado, I have my iPad here with some information about each programme. Let's get right on to it. And coming in first, we have the BBC News, the operational business division of the British Broadcasting Corporation, responsible for the gathering and broadcasting of news and current affairs in the UK and around the world. BBC News, just one of those programmes on the BBC that you almost take for granted. I think that's why it's so low down, but it's so crucial and something that I have come to depend on with the BBC is their impartiality. You may well disagree with me on this, but when you watch other news stations, particularly American ones like Fox News, etc., you can see how evenly balanced the BBC News is, or at least tries to be. So that is the first one on our list today. Following on from that, we have one that people of a certain age, I say that term a lot, but Play School, 1964 show that ran until March 1988. I certainly remember it when I was a kid growing up in the 80s. It was created by Joy Whitby and was aimed at preschool children. You may also remember, if you were born slightly later than me, there was Play Days, I think, which came after Play School as well. Next up, another 80s classic. It actually ran from 1972 to 2001, but I always think of it as an 80s classic. It is Record Breakers, a British children's TV show themed around world records and produced by the BBC. Originally presented by the late great Roy Castle, of course. And for the Eurovision fans amongst you, Cheryl Baker was, of course, the co-host after she was in the wonderful Bucks Fizz. Next up, a theme tune to strike fear into any school child about to go back to school on a Sunday night. It is Antiques Roadshow, still running today. It started in 1979, so it's actually as old as me, would you believe? Slightly older, having started on the 18th of February. And yes, the Antique Roadshow is a popular programme that has spawned multiple international versions. Travels across Britain, bringing together in each location specialists in antiques and fine arts to have them appraise items bought in by the general public. Next up, another 80s and 90s classic, certainly for kids in the morning on Saturdays. It is Going Live. Going Live as presented by Philip Schofield and Sarah Green, of course. Other presenters included the comic legends that were Trevor and Simon, Annabelle Giles, Philip Hodgson, Emma Forbes, Nick Ball, James Hickson and Mark Chase. And it ran from 1987 to 1993. I actually thought it was on longer than that. But one that we've got coming up, I think, replaced it. So we'll come back to that one. Next up, another one synonymous with the BBC, certainly late at night schedule, the Open University programmes that began in 1971. The Open University first broadcast on the 3rd of January 1971 on BBC Two. The new university reached out to its first students through the innovative use of television and radio and swiftly proved that it was possible to teach university level subjects to unqualified students at a distance. Really ahead of its time when you think about it. You think nowadays, certainly since COVID, that online learning and distance learning is the norm, but back in the 1970s, this was a truly innovative idea, and a great kind of almost socialist idea as well when you think about it. The idea that education is for everyone, and that I've done a course at the Open University and I can't sing its praises loud enough, because the idea that you can learn these courses whilst you're still working, or you're a parent, it really opens up the idea of education is for everyone. So I am a big fan of the Open University, and as boring as the programs were in the 70s and 80s, I'm so glad that they were there. Coming in next is one that I randomly forgot to add into the list for no good reason really, because it's all kinds of awesome. It's Around the World in 80 Days with Michael Palin, which I believe was his first travel documentary, and follows everybody's favourite python around the world, as the title says. And his kind of genuine personality throughout is really infectious and makes you want to follow him on his travels. Next up, another quite hard-hitting one, Tenko, which was a drama series in the early 80s, 1981, ran for 3 series, and it's about a group of British, Dutch and Australian women who were taken by the Japanese as prisoners of war after the fall of Singapore in 1942. I need to watch this one. I haven't actually watched Tenko, I'm ashamed to say. I know it's one I've heard a lot of friends say what a wonderful series it is, so I definitely need to check this one out. And going back to Going Live, we have Live and Kicking, which started in 1993, so I'm guessing it did take over. That's the year that Going Live finished. So, and yeah, Live and Kicking is a British television children's series that originally aired on BBC One from the 2nd of October 1993 to the 15th of September 2001. Now do the maths on that. I think that ran longer than than Going Live, didn't it? Yeah, I think that ran slightly longer. You'll know, if you were a kid at the time, how important Live and Kicking was. I can still remember the theme tune, and it was presented by now very famous people: Emma Forbes, Jamie Theakston, Andy Peters, Zoe Ball, and John Barrowman actually got his start there as well, any fellow Doctor Who fans. Next up, if we're talking about bringing knowledge to the masses, then one of the most impressive programmes for that, certainly for children, that I find is Newsround, BBC Newsround, which started in 1972 and is still running to this day. Fantastic programme. What I love about Newsround is that it simplifies the news without ever patronising children. It's a really, really important institution, I think, Newsround, and I'm glad to see that it's on this list. Next up is another classic drama that I have yet to see, I'm ashamed to say. It is I, Claudius from 1976. It ran for 1 season and featured some very, very famous faces in their youth, including John Hurt, Derek Jacobi and Patrick Stewart, as well as the ever wonderful Brian Blessed. It was a web of power, corruption and lies, the reigns of the emperors who came after Julius Caesar, following the history of the Roman Empire from Marcellus to the death of Claudius. Spoilers alert. Yeah, definitely need to check that one out. I remember my dad saying that is an amazing drama. So yeah, one to watch. I'm pretty sure it'll be on BritBox, that one. Next we have, from 1992, one that I definitely remember. I would have been about 12 at the time, and it is Ghostwatch. Ghostwatch was a fantastic, I mean, it's quite laughable now, but at the time it was taken completely seriously by many, many viewers, including myself. It was a reality horror pseudo-documentary television film, first broadcast on Halloween night 1992, and it followed a bit of a Most Haunted idea long before Most Haunted was a thing. Had Sarah Green, Michael Parkinson in it, and was all about a haunted house. And as the programme goes on, it gets further and further into spooky goings on. And at the time, we were all completely convinced it was real, and that The ghost, which was nicknamed Pipes, was a real life thing. Next up, we have another absolutely iconic show that has run for absolutely yonks and yonks. That's a measurement, right? It is Blue Peter, starting in 1958 and still going to this day. It is a children's magazine helping children to make things. You'll know the catchphrase, of course, here's one I made earlier. It also has celebrity guests, music, sport, food, and a whole lot more. It's kind of like a magazine show, like the One Show, but for children. And yeah, first started in 1958 and very, very famous. One of the programs that I should imagine if you talk about the BBC for any period of time, you'll get people talking, no doubt, about their recollections of Blue Peter. Next is the coverage of Wimbledon. This is something that's only just been on as I speak. It's been on for actually 90 years, with little breaks in between, of course. It's been on for 90 years every summer, and it was first televised back in 1927 when the first radio commentary was broadcast. Next up, we go from the ridiculous to, of course, the sublime, probably the most highbrow of all these programmes on the list. It is the wonderful Chucklevision. Chucklevision started in 1987, would you believe, and only finished recently after 292 episodes and 21 series, when, of course, Paul Chuckle sadly passed away. It was a British television entertainment comedy programme starring the Chuckle Brothers, and I know people of a certain age, there is that term again, absolutely loved Chucklevision and have very, very fond memories of it. Talking of kids and fond memories, we have Horrible Histories, which started in 2009. This is one of those kids shows that appeals to the whole family. I mean, I was far too old to be watching this. I think I was I 29 or 30 years old when this came out, but I have still seen many a clip of Horrible Histories because it's one of those that bridges the generations and is funny and informative for all ages. Based, of course, on the Terry Deary Horrible History books. One that I wouldn't say bridges the generations, is still frightening me silly to this day, is the 1984 war drama Threads. Threads was shown to us in school. Me and my wife Lucy both remember being in school and watching this, but people sort of a year or two before us or a year or two after us don't remember it. So it must have been something that was shown to kids of a particular year, and it absolutely terrified me. It terrified me more than anything I have seen before or since. I rewatched it again a couple of years back thinking, oh, it won't be scary anymore, I'm a grown man. And yeah, it terrified me all over again. It's essentially, it's a soap opera about what would happen in a city like Sheffield, where it was set, if a nuclear bomb dropped. And I think what was so terrifying about it is how real it felt. You got to know the characters long before the massive, nuclear blast went off, and so it felt like you were in there in the action with them, and it was absolutely terrifying. I can't believe they made us watch it. But yeah, we were both traumatized by it. I actually remember not talking for a good couple of hours afterwards. I think I'd become selective mute, such was my fear and terror from this. If you get a chance to watch it, it's a fascinating piece of drama, but it's not for the faint of heart like myself. Next is a comedy. It is Citizen Smith, which ran for 4 seasons from 1977. I remember some of this. I think it was repeated in the 80s, but was probably, I think the humour was perhaps a bit over my head at the time. I need to go back and watch it, but it's yeah, it was basically making fun of your kind of champagne socialist rebellion type, sort of lefties, tree huggers like myself. The self-styled Che Guevara of tooting pushes back the tide of domesticity, the slacker and petty criminal leading a revolutionary group. It was written by John Sullivan and, of course, featured a young Robert Lindsay as Wolfie Smith. The Chronicles of Narnia are next. Not the films that you might have seen, but there was a drama series that ran for 3 seasons. A lot of people will remember the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe season, but there was actually a couple more seasons after that. There was Prince Caspian and the Silver Chair. I think those are the ones that were broadcast. I absolutely loved this as a kid. I loved the animatronics that were used on Aslan, and although it's maybe dated a little bit now, it is still one of my favourite adaptations of the great novels by C.S. Lewis, and certainly The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe I watch every Christmas time without fail. Absolutely love it. Talking of loving it, Eurovision is up next. A wonderful contest between so many different countries trying to come up with the best song that they can to win the competition. And although it is often mocked, derided, is extremely camp and kitsch, it is one of my highlights of the year, watching the Eurovision coverage on the BBC. And I do think it's done more to bring countries together, especially in this divided time. It's more crucial than ever. And hopefully next year it will be broadcast not just by the BBC, but the BBC live from England. So can't wait for that. Next up, from 1985, we have one of the longest running soaps in UK history, EastEnders, which so far has run for 34 seasons. It follows the working class residents of Albert Square, a fictional place situated in the East End of London, struggling to face the challenges of everyday life. Just a Minute is next, and this is I think it's mostly radio. I think there might have been a couple of episodes on television, but it didn't really translate as well as it was on radio. One of my absolute favourites on Radio 4. I listen to this all the time, pretty much every week if I can. The whole idea of Just a Minute is that they have just a minute to talk about a particular subject without repetition, deviation, or hesitation. And that sounds really easy, but it's actually really, really not. Try to talk for a minute and not repeat a word or not stumble. I know I certainly can't do it. The amount of edits I've had to do on this video so far. It is now hosted by Sue Perkins since 2021, but for more than 50 years before that, the programme was hosted by the great Nicholas Parsons. Up next, we have Mr. Ben, another childhood favourite, this one. Mr. Ben was a character created by David McKee, who originally appeared in several children's books, first published in 1967. It was first broadcast as a cartoon in 1971 and 1972, and was narrated by Ray Brooks. It follows a businessman who finds a magical dress-up shop and finds that whatever clothes he puts on, he goes back in history to that particular era, which is such an exciting idea for a kids program. And yeah, I used to love this one as a kid, as I know many people of my age and older have done. We're nearly into the top 50, but just missing out by a couple of points. We have Downton Abbey, which first broadcast in 2010 and has run for 5 seasons and 2 movies. I know it's had 1 movie, and I think another one is coming out or has just come out. Anyway, it follows the family estate of some aristocrats during a very interesting period of time, running from the, I think, 1920s and then through the war. And yeah, very interesting to see how the upper classes in those times lived and how the times changed for them, of course. And last up, I'm going to do my worst Geordie accent here, so if you are a Geordie, you might want to skip this. But we are going up to Newcastle for Bite a Grove, which is a drama for kids that started in 1989. And rather like Grange Hill, which, has that come up yet? I don't think it has. It was a very hard-hitting kids programme, much more for young adults, I think, and covered a lot of quite difficult and contentious issues for young preteens and teenagers. It is also famous for introducing us to Ant and Dec, of course, as well as some other famous actors and actresses such as Jill Halfpenny and Donna Eyre. You may remember both of those. It was a drama series about a group of young people who frequent the Biker Grove Youth Centre in Newcastle. It ran from 1989 until 2006, would you believe? There are 344 episodes, and it's definitely something that people who grew up at the time will remember fondly. Some of the storylines, particularly when was it PJ or Duncan, Ant or Dec? I can't remember which one, but do you remember them getting blinded at paintballing? That still sticks with me now. So yeah, it's sort of stories like that. Very controversial when you think of it for young people's television. So there we go. We are up to number 51. So I hope you've enjoyed that so far. Please do let me know what you think of those programmes in the comments below, and any programmes that you think may be coming up in the next 50. So I hope you can join me for that. And thank you so much for everyone who got involved in voting for their favourite BBC programme. And I'll see you again soon. Take care.